The videos in this post are a collection of my experiences during a very trying time in my life. I share them as part of what I hope will be self-treatment towards my own healing and as encouragement, consolation, and affirmation for anyone going through a similar experience. For reference, I am a physician and my specialty is clinical pathology. I worked as a faculty member at a historically black medical school until 2021. At that point, I left my faculty position and entered a fellowship training program in hematopathology at a predominantly white institution in order to expand my practice opportunities. I call this series Triple Threat, and I do so because upon entering the fellowship training program, I perceived that I had three potential challenges to contend with as I pursued this opportunity. The first and most obvious, I'm a black woman, and I'm a black woman unapologetically so. The second, I struggled with fatigue and feeling less than ideal for many years of my life. For much of that time, I assumed that I was inherently defective, not enough, run down, and possibly lazy. I worked to try to understand what was going on and to try to feel better, and I eventually found out that I have narcolepsy type 2 as well as dysautonomia. In addition to excessive daytime sleepiness, I continue to deal with brain fog, loss of time, exercise intolerance, nausea, unexplained shortness of breath, as well as a number of other symptoms. The third challenge. I started the program at an advanced age. I graduated from medical school over a decade before starting the fellowship program, and I had worked as an assistant professor for the preceding 5 years. So there you go, a black woman with disabilities that decided to go back to training after having been out of the game. I was a triple threat. The videos that follow are my descriptions of and my thoughts on my experiences recorded after receiving some less than stellar mid-year feedback and going forward through the subsequent months. I'll provide commentary with each set of videos, both for context and to provide relevant insight since then. Although I began recording the original videos 2 years ago, I spent much of that time since recording examining my motives and pondering how to share my experience. I knew that my perspective was one that needed to be broadcast. The lingering question has been, however, how to share my experience in a manner that's holistically beneficial for as many people as possible. In the current setting of criticism and mistreatment of black women in positions of public power, the underfunding of HBCUs, conversations that I've had with other black women in medicine regarding their own challenges, and the pervasive disparity in the physical, mental, social, and economic well-being of black people in this country, my intent is to provide data. These videos serve as my submission to the collective evidence in the case for the restitution of safety, financial well-being, professional respect, regard, and compensation, and the peaceful, joyful thriving of all black people. This is my nightstand. And you'll see like this blue thing there. That's where I keep my drugs. And I've gone through a number of habits that I've tried to develop to remember to take my meds. And one of the last things I had been doing was putting my meds on my bedside table, along with something to drink so that I could take them preferably before it was time for me to get out of bed, but at least when I got out of bed. Turns out yesterday I came home to find my meds right there where I left them. I did not take them yesterday morning at all. So I went through the entire day without taking any medications. And I didn't know it until later, but my body knew it. For some reason, like things just didn't, not for some reason, because I did not take my meds, I knew something was off. I didn't feel good. I And when I say I didn't feel good, I was drained. But in addition, I, just didn't have a lot of the patience and tolerance that I usually have, including at work. And I felt like didn't accomplish too much today. I don't like to say it, it's just unfortunate but true that December that just passed, so about a month ago, was one of the most emotional cop weeks of my life. Nah, I'm just joking, I'm not a cop. But it was emotional because I had gone through the first 6 months never feeling capable, adequate in my performance, in my job, my training. And that was confirmed earlier in the month. I had a situation where I was being asked some questions by my attending that I felt that I should know, and I did a horrible job, and from my perspective at that. And then after that sign-out session, my attending sent me a flyer for a tutorial or conference on the topic that I'm training for. So me being the person who's very highly skilled at the cognitive distortion of mind reading, assumed that she sent me that flyer for that tutorial conference because she felt my skills were subpar and that I needed some extra help. I, being the type of person to say, hey, let's call a spade, I said, yeah, I'm not doing so well. I hope you please don't misinterpret me as not being, I don't want to say engaged, but I am trying. I'm reading, I'm studying. I'm just having a hell of a lot of trouble remembering and more so recalling those things that I have learned. And I spend a lot of time in the hallway stairwell crying. Proverbial crap hit the fan, and I'm gonna be saying this like the messy diarrhea hit the fan. I guess probably about a week after that, the day before my birthday, I got my mid-year evaluation. And the words that stand out to me for my mid-year evaluation for my program director are that you are not meeting the expectations of the faculty. Shot, punch, knife to the heart. I obviously broke down. I was crying, and to the point where even now I'm like, I feel like it was a traumatizing experience. So, sorry, my brain, this is part of my experience. My brain blanks out and gets tired. And I definitely I don't usually talk this much in one sitting. So, yeah, being told that I'm not meeting someone's expectations, not feeling like I had good evidence. I wasn't given, specifically what I'm doing that's not meeting expectations, or at least in the manner that I felt was appropriate in the academic setting to tell someone that, as in like I wasn't receiving evaluations at regular intervals coming up to that mid-year evaluation such that I could be actively monitoring and adjusting to whatever the expectations were that I wasn't meeting up until this point. And I felt like that conversation just really went awry and was an example of how not to do academic evaluations. But it's all good. I don't hold I don't hold my program director personally accountable. I realize it's a learning experience. But yeah, since then, I've been full of anxiety, wondering why these however many attendings were making a judgment about me and never said anything to me about what that judgment was, what I should be doing. I did experience negative interactions, attitude, without any explanation that I easily picked up on, but that I think contributed, or more so, is evidence of the opinion that was had about me So now going forward, I've been seeing all these people who form these opinions of me, or at least co-sign on the opinion of at least one person, and wondering, so what are you really thinking now? Like, so I'm inadequate? And yeah, I'll leave it there for now. So there you have it, the beginning of my documentation of a journey that I would not wish on anyone. A few topics came up for which I want to provide more insight. In the introduction, I mentioned my diagnoses. Unfortunately, narcolepsy, dysautonomia, and many other diagnoses go undiagnosed for years. For myself and others, that trend leads to suffering and self-doubt. As I said, I was tempted to believe others' opinions of me as lazy. When you don't feel like you know you should, fight and keep fighting to get an answer. When you get a diagnosis and start treatment, continue to monitor your progress and any changes. Be a dogged advocate for your own well-being. Ask questions about everything: diet, new research, complementary and alternative therapy, anything you can think of. You never know what questions will be key to your breakthrough. Moreover, I still pray and believe in my own healing, and I know that my mental perspective affects my physical well-being. One of the most important pieces of advice that I have given to students is to actively ask for feedback and don't settle for strong work. Oh, you're doing fine. Keep reading, or any other non-specific line. In postgraduate medical education, you should be receiving written standardized evaluations at least monthly. I was well aware of this going into my training program, but I became so overwhelmed by the workload and intimidated by the situation that I didn't make big enough of an issue of it. Don't be me, no matter what your particular field, medicine or otherwise. In order to receive appropriate feedback, you need clear objectives to start with. Crafting and standardizing useful objectives is difficult, and it's an area of medical education and graduate medical education in particular that is unfortunately lacking. Part of the challenge in accomplishing this task is the lack of predictability in the cases that learners encounter. Yet, this area may prove the most important for righting the tendency for unfair evaluations that many learners have to face. Finally, much of the video coverage spoke to the emotional and mental impact of sitting and hearing. You are not meeting the expectations of the faculty. My immediate reply, by the grace of experience as an educator, was to ask for specific examples substantiating the statement. As I listened to the response, I broke down in tears, despite my most heroic efforts. The response reminded me that most people are very uncomfortable with other people crying. Most sane people do not want to intentionally hurt another person, and they feel guilty if someone cries in response to something they say or do. But in that regard, there are two things that I want to leave with you. The first is that tears are okay. At least that's what my mom says. Let people cry. We as humans exist on a spectrum of emotional sensitivity. We have unspoken experiences that place us at different distances from our breaking points. For me, I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm painfully perceptive. And in this situation, I'd spent the first half of the program unsure of my abilities without any standards to seek or feedback to use as a basis for adjustment. Crying is not unprofessional. What is unprofessional is telling someone that they shouldn't cry and making statements like, well, what are you going to do if you get this type of feedback while you're working? And discounting my validity as I cry by mentioning that, well, women have to work and deal with families and other challenges, presumably while never expressing their emotions. The second thing, if you are in a position of power in a similar setting, find out what the tears mean. You may find a hidden trove of core beliefs that inform their very existence and serve as a source of undue stress driven by perfectionism. you could gain invaluable insight into the humanity and heart of those you work with, making you a better coworker and leader, one who sees the individual. In contrast, you may find out that their tears are a sign of injustice that you have the power to address and rectify. As a teacher, I found that sitting with students in the midst of what they were feeling left me better equipped to adjust my approach to teaching, mentoring, and advising for each one individually. I was far from perfect, but I learned from my students. Any artist can tell you that you don't treat all media the same. Play-Doh is softer and more pliable than clay. The same pressure on each will yield vastly different results and possibly undesirable results. Oil paint takes days to dry, but provides texture to a painting, while watercolors are quickly absorbed on the canvas, but provide transparency and delicate detail. Thank you for listening.